call Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, the Labor Party supports this bill, but with a number of substantial reservations. And if you listen to the previous speaker, who's obviously enjoyed a great evening at the Science Forum dinner tonight, and I'm glad to see he's a great supporter of science, you would think that this bill was nirvana. Except when you delve into the details, sir, the bill fails to implement the core recommendations of the government's own inquiry into foreign tax disclosure rules to immediately implement phase 2 of the anti-money laundering law changes. Now, I know a little bit about the anti-money laundering law changes when I was Associate Minister of Justice. And the question for the government that we'll look as we go through the stages of this bill as to why that phase 2, a recommendation of its own inquiring body, was never implemented, sir. Those reporting requirements would have extended the scope of this to lawyers, accountants and real estate agents, and with no disrespect to any of those professions, they are all vulnerable to nefarious behaviour within them. It's interesting that what this actually does is leave a massive gap within the reporting regime. And it is a failure, and it is a failure to meet not only the obligations put upon us by the international community, because the anti-money laundering changes are an international obligation, as we know, but it also leaves a gap and a weakness within the legislation itself. Secondly, we would argue, sir, that in order for New Zealand's foreign trust regime to play a useful and relevant part in cracking down on tax evasion, corrupt practices, you need greater transparency. And here again, sir, the bill is deficient. Greater transparency for us, sir, means that there should be, as a starting point, there should be a register, a publicly available register of foreign trusts. And the government has never been able to identify where the difficulty in that proposition lies. After all, of course, you have just such a register for companies and other forms of trusts. So the question is why you wouldn't have total transparency, and why you wouldn't support, why they, sir, would not support, the government that is, a publicly available register of foreign trusts. I can't, for life, I've looked at the legislation, I'm on the select committee, we've heard the submissions, but I can't understand, maybe one of the lawyers over there can tell us, why that would be deficient, how that would negatively impact on those either beneficiaries or trustees in respect of foreign trusts. Again, another recommendation that wasn't fulfilled, sir. So it'd be very interesting as we go through this. The next National Party Speaker, if there is one, might want to take a call, or the Minister may, and we'll be examining this, of course, in the committee stages, sir. But to answer those two simple questions: why it fails to meet phase 2, why it doesn't include and extend to lawyers and accountants and real estate agents, why it doesn't fulfil our international obligations in terms of the anti-money laundering legislation, and why the government's chosen a path which is less than full transparency by not having a public register of foreign trusts. It seems this government, when it comes to registers, they have an aversion to them for some reason. I don't quite know why, but I haven't seen an argument that says to me that there would be a negative impact either on beneficiaries or trustees of having a register of these trusts. It assists in cracking down on international tax evasion and corruption. Surely that's the objective that the government first denied that this was ever a problem, of course, then set up an inquiry and were told it is a problem, and then included a few bits and pieces of window dressing within this legislation. Finally, sir, I just want to touch briefly on what Mr Bailey said in respect of the so-called flexible tax options which he put forward. Now, I've run a small business. I agree with Mr Bailey, the lifeblood of the economy. I just wonder why it was that the minister at the time, I think, who implemented this, or put this proposal forward, Mr Joyce, waited until Labor had drafted, released and had vetted by the former IRD Commissioner, Robin Oliver, a policy for flexible tax which went far beyond this particular policy. And as one official, who I won't name, said to me, well, the day you guys released it, Mr Joyce rushed into his office, grabbed his officials and said, how the hell are we going to respond to this? And out of that came this. So I say to Mr Brayley, congratulations. Came to the battle when the war was won, the war was over, or as a mate of mine used to say, a day late and a dollar short, but nice try.